Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. I am so excited today. I'm so excited. You guys know how excited I am. Today I am joined by Lori Ostlund, who wrote After the Parade, which you know is my favorite backlist read of last year. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you, Russell, and thank you for coming to our house and having brunch with us.
I don't think we said this in the last video, but Lori is married to Anne Ryef, who you guys have seen in a previous video. We talked about wives, but we didn't say anything other than Lori, so you probably wouldn't connect that without me just saying
But you
that.
probably noticed that the background looks remarkably similar to Anne's.
We had a lovely brunch, and Lori and Anne cooked for us, and today we are going to talk about we talked about Anne's book already. We're going to talk about Lori's book, which I absolutely loved. When did After the Parade come out?
It came out in September 2015, I believe is when it came out. So, yeah, it's coming up on its third birthday.
Third
Later
birthday.
This year. Yeah.
It's funny because when I read this book and talked about it on my channel, everyone who's read this told me, that's a book more people need to read. We love that book. No one knows it. And I'm like, well, I'm going to make it my mission.
Thank you. Thank you. I remember when I met you, by met you I mean when you tweeted to me about the book, and I was actually in the emergency room with Anne.
This is a great story, guys.
So I felt like it was inappropriate. She's lying there in pain, and I'm trying to pull things up on my phone to let people know that she's in the hospital and we're not going to be able to make plans. And then Twitter says you have this notification from Russell. So I look at it, and then of course I say, "Oh my God, this is so nice," and she just does not want to be talking about anything except the fact that she's needs the morphine now. So, yeah,
so our friendship started with Anne in the hospital.
It did. So it has great roots.
So After the Parade, how do you summarize what this book is about?
So the main character is Erin Englund, and people have asked me, Erin is around 41, 42 when the book starts. And people have told me that they feel like it's a coming of age story. But then they're always very quick to say, but can it be since he's 42? And I think they're right, though. I think it is in a sense, because he is a man who, half of the story is about his childhood in Minnesota, and half of it is about him as an adult. And he's left his partner of 20 years as the book starts. And he is driving from Albuquerque to San Francisco, and he is going to, for the very first time in his life, live alone. And that's where it begins, and it's just kind of about him getting settled in San Francisco, teaching ESL. But I think a lot of times when your life is in transition, it's kind of when the past starts presenting itself more forcefully. And so he's kind of pushed into dealing with the past and dealing with the fact that his mother left him when he was 16, and he has no idea where she is.
We could do a whole video about Erin's mother, to be honest with you. There's a lot to say about her. So, now the interesting thing is, Erin, from Minnesota, lives in Albuquerque and moves to San Francisco. I know someone else that had that same sort of trajectory.
Erin and I do have a very similar trajectory, and I've kind of made peace with the fact that I'm an autobiographical writer, and by that I just mean that my own life kind of triggers certain things, and then as I start to write, I'm very quick to change things up. But that was where Erin, in a sense, or that's his life, really does overlap with a lot of mine. But he's male simply because the world that he experiences as a boy, that kind of shapes in the bullying, is something that so many of my male friends dealt with, who grew up in small towns especially. So he became a man, and that actually made it easier. People always say, well, why is he a man? His story to me feels it's not my story. That part of it is not my story. But it also made it much easier to kind of extract myself from the experience. And so I found these ways to tap into him because it was familiar, but to be able to pull back and just let him have his own story. So.
Well, so what inspired Erin's story? What was sort of the catalyst that started him?
I think think for me, a lot of times with both short stories and novels, what I find is that all of these different pieces, I start writing these different threads, and at a certain point they start kind of growing together. And so one of the things that I think triggered it is that years and years ago, when we were living in Albuquerque, we were at this potluck because we were lesbians, and and so at this potluck was a woman that I don't know, but somebody said to me that when she was a child, her father fell off of a parade float and died. And this has always stayed with me. I think I've always been attracted to kind of the intersection between humor and tragedy.
Yeah.
And that idea of somebody falling through the air and landing on their head and dying in the middle of a parade has those two things. I mean, how awful to have to say to people, this is how my father died. He fell off of a parade float and landed on his head. So that was one of the images that always stayed with me. I thought I want to explore that idea. But then there were just so many others, talking to friends who'd grown up in small towns and been bullied. That became another strain. And I teach ESL. So I had been recording. I was kind of, before I would go to work in the morning, I would just write down all of the funny things my students had said the day before. And I think work doesn't always get written about a lot. So that became another strain, was writing about my students, who are great.
So when I finished your book, I felt that the book ended so hopeful. And a lot of people that I had conversations when I talked about this on my channel thought that this book was very sad, and they left the book not hopeful. When you finished the book, did you find it to be a hopeful novel?
You know what, that is really interesting. And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine who's also a writer wrote and said, I'm doing this AWP panel, and it's called No More Dead Bodies on the Page, because years ago she had turned in a novel to her agent or an editor, and the editor had said, you know what it needs is more dead bodies on the page. So she wanted to do a panel in which writers talk about how we can still show reality, but embrace hope in our writing.
Interesting.
And look at things like realistic portrayals of love or community or just friendships, or the things that sustain us even in the midst of struggles. And so she reached out to me, and I think she did because she thought the book was hopeful. But I have had other people tell me also that that it's way too sad for them. I think it has to do with where people are at in their lives. I consider it hopeful.
Yeah. Well, Aaron's sort of, I think coming of age is perfect, because he went from basically one household to another household that took care of him, and this is the first time he's taking care of himself.
That's how I read it. You know, when I got to the end, I thought he has had a huge breakthrough.
Yeah.
And that to me felt, given who he is, I've been asked, you know, weren't you afraid to create a main character who's kind of passive? But that was the whole point for me, was that he was someone who was really stuck, and just learning to take action and move forward, I think, is, for me, incredibly hopeful. So I also felt hopeful when I reached the end.
Well, you guys know, if you've watched my channel for any time, that I adored this book. So definitely go pick it up, make your bookstore order it, and have it on the shelf. It's been since 2015. What are you working on now?
I always work on things simultaneously. So I always thought that I was a short story writer at heart, but I decided when I was writing the novel that I like writing novels also. So I'm working still on some short stories, and one of those short stories kept getting longer and longer, and pretty soon it turned into a novella. So I thought, okay, I need to figure out how to write a novella. I don't know how to write a novella. But then I was saved from that because it quickly grew way past novella length. So right now I have probably 300 pages. I still don't fully know what it's about, but I have 300 pages. And then I have the short story collection that it was going to be part of. That's on hold. And then I have another novel that is called The Proprietresses. and it is set in an Asian furniture store called Two Serious Ladies. My wife and I owned an Asian furniture store called Two Serious Ladies, and
Two Serious Ladies, like the Jane
Yes,
Bowles
it was
novel.
named after the Jane Bowles
Okay.
novel. We had about 8 people in all the years we were open that knew that illusion. But they were always, we always wanted to give them discounts when they did. We were so impressed. And so that is another book that I'm working on. I set it aside, honestly. It's a more political book. I think it kind of, among other things, looks at maybe the specter of violence that women just kind of live with. This idea that even when things are never really happening to you, you're always assessing each moment as though they could. And so it just kind of pieces together. We had this crazy peeping Tom at a certain point in our lives. We were lying in bed in Albuquerque. We had a fenced-in backyard. Our back window was way off the ground, about 15 feet. And I looked up and there was a man hanging from our window watching us read one night. And we don't know how he got into our backyard. He continued to come in and smoke. But that triggered something in me. So that's where the book starts.
Oh, wow. Okay, I can't wait.
So.
I can't wait. Well, as you guys know, I am going to ask Lori to recommend some books to us to end our video. And she's going to come with, it looks like she brought 4 along.
Wow.
So, 2 poetry collections and 2 novels, right?
Yes. Well, I love short stories. I think they often get short shrift. And so I actually just blurbed, and I don't have a visual of it, but the next Flannery O'Connor winner, which is coming out this year by Kirsten Sundberg Lundstrom. Watch for her book. I'm spacing out on the name, and I don't have even the galleys of it. But it's a great collection. The most recent short story collection that I did just finish is Undoing by Kim McGowan. And she is a local writer.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed her observations of people, and there's just some really beautiful language in this. So that's...
Do we know when it hasn't come out yet?
This has come out.
Okay.
This came out, I don't know, a month ago maybe, in March.
So it's on shelves.
So it's on shelves, but support short stories. Every once in a while, I tell Anne I threaten to start a bookstore. The bookstore would only sell short story collections. And everyone who's a short story writer thinks that's a great business plan, and everyone else just laughs.
And you're also going to recommend a couple of poetry collections to us,
I am.
Right?
I'm not going to say a whole lot. We just pulled, as Anne told you, we have been reading poetry every night. When we first met, we got to know each other by reading each other our favorite poems. And so we've started this tradition up of reading poetry again. Every night before bed, it should be the way that one ends the day, with poetry. So the one that we are almost finished with is a poetry collection called The Carnival of Affection. It's a beautiful cover, and it's by Philip F. Clark. And I picked this collection up because Philip and I somehow became Facebook friends. I've never met him, but I've always liked his sensibility, and I like the poets that he tends to talk about, and I just like the way he thinks on the page. I enjoy his posts, and that is remaining. That's true of his poetry. We're enjoying this one very much. And the other one was part of the Yale series of younger poets. It won that several years ago, and it is called It Is Daylight by Arta Collins. And I won't say much more about this one, but I remember that we really like this one also.
How romantic is the poetry story, you guys? Now, if you are single and you are trying to woo someone, start reading some poetry. It leads to a 27-year marriage. Just saying. Just saying it worked out pretty well for these 2 ladies.
It did work. And the last big shout out, my mother-in-law, Anne's mother, sent me this for Christmas. And she and I sometimes argue about literature. I just think it's nice to have a mother-in-law that one can argue about literature with, because my mother is not,
not
that
person.
mother or mother-in-law. So she sent me this thinking I would like it, and she was right on. It's nonfiction. It's called Romantic Outlaws, The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. And I became interested in Mary Wollstonecraft in graduate school. I read part of her Vindication of the Rights of Women.
Yeah.
But knew very little about her. And so I don't think I even knew that she actually died shortly after she gave birth to Mary Shelley.
I don't think people know that she's Mary Shelley's mother.
She is Mary. So this is a biography, basically, of their mother-daughter relationship that never actually physically happened because she had died.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing. I'm not a huge Percy Bysshe Shelley fan. I'm not a big fan of the Romantics. This is a very good book.
So let's hold it up one more time because we didn't say the author's name. So Romantic Outlaws by Charlotte Gordon.
Charlotte Gordon, and it won the National Book Critics Circle Award.
For nonfiction, probably, or biography or something.
Yeah.
So, and Mary, if you guys haven't read Wollstonecraft, you really should. She has a place in the canon, most definitely.
Yeah,
So.
and I'm also a fan. I like Frankenstein. I haven't read it in years, but I do like it. So.
Yeah. Could you imagine writing a book when you're 18 years old and being known for it for the rest of eternity?
Well, and she wasn't known for it then. I mean, it didn't sell well. It only became
crazy
popular after the fact, which I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, Lori, thank you so much.
Thank you, Russell.
You know I'm a huge fan. This has been a great day, and you guys should definitely pick up after the parade, and you should look for whatever comes out. You have a short story collection that came out before this, right?
I do.
What's the name of that one?
It's called The Bigness of the World.
The Bigness of the World. I'm having a really hard time finding it, just so you guys know.
You are?
Yeah, so I try not to order offline like Amazon and stuff, and so I search for it at every bookstore, and I can find after the parade. So. Well,
I've been worrying about this. So Scribner reissued it, and it didn't seem to be a problem, but a couple of bookstores just told me it had been a problem lately for them to get it.
Well, I'm on the hunt, and you guys should pick this one up. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And until next time, you guys, happy reading. Bye.
Bye.